They say a man's home is his castle. I guess they never expected the queen to burn it down on her way out. My name's Eric Mendoza, 46 years old, born and raised in Central Texas. I'm a land surveyor by trade, nothing flashy, but I've always had an eye for the lay of the land. I built my life the way my father taught me, steady, practical, piece by piece. And when I met Laura in my early 30s, I thought I'd found someone who appreciated that kind of grounded simplicity. We dated for a year and got married in the fall. She was everything I thought I needed: smart, ambitious, polished in the way I wasn't. She brought color into my beige world, and for a while I was proud to stand beside her while I spent my days charting boundary lines and property markers. She climbed a ladder in a real estate firm, eventually making partner. I admired her drive. I thought we were a team. Together we bought land 10 acres on the outskirts of Austin. I inherited it from my uncle, but she had the vision. "Let's build a dream house," she said. So we did. Modern farmhouse, big wraparound porch, vaulted ceilings, every inch of it custom. She handled the design. I handled the dirt. We poured a life into that place, but somewhere along the way something shifted. Late nights at the office became normal. Her phone, once carelessly left on the kitchen counter, started living face down. She stopped asking me how my day was, and I stopped offering. It was like the walls of that perfect house echoed less and less with laughter and more with silence. Then, one day I came home early from a job and saw her car in the driveway. I thought maybe we could finally talk, maybe she'd cook dinner, maybe we'd reconnect out instead. I walked in on her standing too close to a man I'd never seen before. They weren't doing anything yet, but their body language said enough. The way he smiled at her, the way she leaned in like I didn't exist. She looked up, saw me standing there like a ghost in my own home, and the air went dead still. She didn't cry, didn't apologize. She just calmly said, "Eric, we need to talk." That talk turned into a battle. 3 months later, we were in court. She wanted the house. She said it was hers. She said it was hers. She had put more into the design, the furnishings, the atmosphere. Her lawyer painted me as the emotionally unavailable husband who let the marriage rot. And you know what? I didn't fight her on the house. I let her have it. On paper, she won. She walked away with the keys, the furniture, the kitchen she spent months designing. But here's the thing she forgot in all her planning, all her scheming. She took the house. But I still owned the land underneath it. After the divorce, I moved into a small rental trailer I had on the edge of the property, the same property, mind you, that the house still sat on. I hadn't been ready to sell the land, and honestly, I wasn't sure I ever would be. It was family land, and even if she lived up there in her modern masterpiece, the roots underneath it belonged to me. That irony kept me warm on cold nights, but emotionally, I was wrecked. You think you're prepared for betrayal when you're older, like somehow age gives you armor. But that's a lie. Betrayal doesn't care how many birthdays you've had, it cuts just the same. I didn't eat right, didn't sleep. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, thinking I was still in that house, only to remember she wasn't next to me anymore. She was in our bed, but with someone else. I buried myself in work sun up to sundown. I was out on job sites. I'd come back at night, crack a beer, and sit on the steps of the trailer, staring up at that house like it was some ghost town from a past life. Sometimes I'd see movement through the windows, a silhouette passing by, laughter echoing faintly. Through the trees I knew she had him over. I knew they were playing house on my soil, but what could I do? Legally, the house was hers. That was the judge's ruling still. Things didn't sit right. It started small. I'd get mail meant for her, legal-looking envelopes with urgent red stamps. One was from the Homeowners Association, odd, since technically, the property wasn't in one. Another was from a contractor. I vaguely remembered working on the foundation. Final notice before lien placement, it said. I almost tossed it, but curiosity got the better of me. Then one day, while checking the property lines for a neighboring parcel, I saw something that made my stomach knot. A crew strangers digging on the far edge of the land near the septic line. They weren't city workers. I approached them, and the guy in charge barely looked up. "You with Laura?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "No, I own the land," I said slowly. "What are you doing here?" He hesitated. "She hired us," said we were expanding the drainage field for the new guest house. I stared at him. Guest house? He nodded, clearly annoyed I was interrupting. "Yeah, concrete was poured last week. She's planning a detached unit Airbnb maybe. I dunno." I walked away in silence, heart hammering. I hadn't approved any construction. She never even asked. No permits had been filed with me or the county under my name. That's when it hit me. She thought because she had the house, she had everything. She assumed the land was part of her prize. She never checked the deed, never thought to dot. And then, the final crack in the damn dot. That evening, I got a call from a buddy of mine who works at the local utilities board. He said, "Eric, I thought, you should know Laura filed a request to reroute the water main through your northern boundary, but she listed herself as the property owner." I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a failed marriage. This was theft. A slow, deliberate erasure of my rights, my legacy, and my family's land. But here's the thing about betrayal. Once you've been gutted, you stop fearing pain, you start planning. You stop asking why they did it and you start figuring out how to stop it. I didn't have all the proof yet, not enough to make a legal move. But I knew something bigger was coming. And Laura, she was so high on her own lies, she didn't even notice me watching from the trees. I just needed to be patient. The land was mine, and no one builds a future on my foundation without asking what's buried underneath. You ever have that moment where grief gives way to focus? That was my sitting in my trailer, holding a glass of cheap whiskey, staring out the window at the house I built. The hurt hadn't disappeared. It still clung to me like the smell of smoke after a fire. But it had changed, hardened, evolved. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was calculating. And once I made that shift, things started falling into place faster than I expected. First, I went to the county clerk's office, a place I'd walked through 100 times during my land survey jobs. This time, I wasn't helping a client. I was digging into my own life. I pulled up the deed history. As expected, the 10 acres was still in my name free and clear. Laura's name had never been added, not even as a joint owner. I had inherited that land before we were married, and I never thought to mix it with our marital assets. Guess I owe a thank you to my younger, cautious self. But then I found something even better. In her divorce filings, Laura had submitted an affidavit claiming the house and the property it stood on were jointly developed marital assets. But that was a lie. She never had legal rights to the land. The house, sure, it was part of our shared investments, but the dirt beneath it, the title, the mineral rights, the zoning records, all mine. And lying under oath. That's perjury. Kept digging. I pulled building permits from the past 3 months. The guest house, the solar installation, the contractor notices I'd received by accident. Every one of them was approved under her name, but every one of them listed my land as the site. Either the county didn't cross-check ownership, or she had found someone willing to play along. My gut told me it was the latter. I needed someone I could trust, so I called Rachel. Rachel was my younger cousin, sharp, quiet, and a real estate attorney with a reputation for dissecting shady contracts like a surgeon with a scalpel. We hadn't talked much since the divorce, mostly because I didn't want to drag family into my mess. But this wasn't just personal anymore, it was legal. She met me at the diner the next morning, a leather-bound notebook in one hand, a take-no-prisoners stare in her eyes. "Tell me everything," she said. Skipping pleasantries, I laid it all out: the construction, the mail, the misfiled water main request, her false affidavit. Rachel didn't interrupt once. When I was done, she nodded slowly. "She's trespassing. If the land's yours, she can't build anything without your approval. She can't legally even set foot outside the perimeter of the house unless you permit it." "What about the house itself?" I asked. She hesitated. "That's the gray part. She owns the structure, but it sits on your land. Without a lease or easement agreement in place, she's in violation. Technically, you could serve her a notice to vacate." I leaned back. The thought of doing that made my pulse race, not out of vengeance, but out of something colder, more calculated: justice. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel and I built our case. She pulled title reports, reviewed the divorce settlement, and even tracked down the HOA complaint that had ended up in my mailbox. Turns out, Laura had been advertising the guest house as a luxury rental despite the fact it hadn't passed inspection and sat half-finished on land she didn't own. Meanwhile, I played dumb. Every evening I sat outside the trailer, sipping a beer, watching the lights flicker on in the house. I saw him again, the same guy from before, the one she had chosen over me. He mowed my lawn, parked his sleek Mercedes on my gravel driveway. I watched them sip wine on the back deck I hand-built, their laughter floating through the night like smoke. It burned. God, it burned, but I didn't let it show because now I had the upper hand, and that changed everything one night. Around midnight, I walked the property line with a flashlight, making sure all the boundary markers were still in place. That's when I found a bundle of construction plans hidden under a tarp by the guest house. I opened it, and there it was, her name, the builder's name, and a schedule of expansion that reached beyond the property line. Plans to build a pool, a private cabana, even a fire pit on my land. The next morning I emailed Rachel a photo of the blueprints. "Time to push back?" I asked. She replied in less than 5 minutes. "Absolutely. Let's light the match." So, while Laura played house up the hill, oblivious and smug, I moved like a ghost, quiet, precise, invisible. She thought she won, but I had the deed, the law, and now the proof. And soon she'd realize the foundation she stood on wasn't made of concrete, it was made of sand, and it was starting to shift. It all came to a head on a Thursday morning: clear sky, quiet air, the kind of morning that fools you into thinking everything's fine. Laura had no idea what was coming. Rachel and I had filed a formal cease and desist 3 days earlier. It laid everything out: unauthorized construction, trespassing, misrepresentation of ownership, and a formal demand to vacate the property unless a lease agreement was signed within 30 days. But we weren't sending it by email or mail. We were serving it in person. I remember walking up that gravel drive, every footstep crunching like thunder in my ears. I hadn't been this close to the house in nearly 6 months, and yet it felt like I'd never left. The wraparound porch still had the same swing I installed. The siding was still that soft grable she insisted on. It looked peaceful, deceptively peaceful. I knocked. Measured. She opened the door. Wineglass in hand, sunglasses perched in her hair like she'd just walked out of a lifestyle magazine. She blinked like I was a hallucination. Eric, she said, caught somewhere between irritation and confusion. Behind me, Rachel stepped forward. Laura St. James, you're being served notice of trespass and unlawful use of private property. Laura's face went pale. She looked from Rachel to me. What is this? You built your house on my land, Laura, I said, voice even, and you've been treating it like your private resort. You don't own the dirt under your feet. I do. You never did. Her mouth opened but no words came. Rachel continued. You'll find the full documentation inside. You've been operating a commercial guest property without legal rights to the land, violating zoning laws, and filing false permits. You have 30 days to vacate or sign a lease agreement. If not, we'll file for forcible removal. And just so you know, any rental income you earned from the guest house will be considered damages. Laura's hand trembled as she grabbed the envelope. You're bluffing. The judge awarded me the house. Yes, I interrupted. The house, not the land. You never asked. You assumed. You lied in your affidavit, Laura. That's perjury. I watched it land like a thunderclap behind her eyes. Her composure cracked. This is insane, she snapped. You wouldn't. I would, I said, steel rising in my chest. And I am. That's when he came downstairs. The same guy I'd seen before, barefoot, shirtless, yawning like he'd just woken up in a 5-star villa. Going on? He asked, rubbing his neck. Laura turned to him wild-eyed. Nothing. Go upstairs. No, I said, stepping past her, my eyes locked on him. You've been living in my house, on my land, parking your car in my driveway, mowing my lawn. Hope you enjoyed the view because it's about to change. He looked at Laura. Wait, what? She didn't answer. He looked at me, brow furrowed. You're serious? I nodded, dead serious. I turned and walked away, then, heart pounding, I could feel her eyes on my back, could hear the quiet unraveling starting behind me, the whispers, the panic, the chaos of someone realizing they just stepped off a cliff. But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I sent the documents to the county zoning board, the utility office, and the building inspector. I copied the IRS and state tax board, flagging her undeclared rental income and misuse of permits. By the next morning, everything started falling apart for her. The building inspector shut down the guest house project immediately. Red tape plastered the entrance. Stop work order, site unauthorized. The zoning board launched an investigation into her permits. Her contractor dropped the job entirely, and by the end of the week, Laura called me. I let it go to voicemail. She tried again and again. Finally, on the 4th try, I answered. Her voice was smaller now, measured no trace of the arrogant woman who once tossed me aside like yesterday's news. Eric, she said, can we talk? I was silent for a moment. Then, about what? She hesitated. About fixing this. I didn't gloat, didn't raise my voice. Just said, you tried to erase me from something that was mine before you ever came along. You lied under oath. You disrespected the land my family gave me. You built a house on my back and then tried to sell the view. There's no fixing that. Laura, you want money? She asked, desperate. No, I said. I want you off my land. Click 30. Days passed. She fought it at first, hired a new lawyer, tried to spin it, but everything was already in motion. The evidence was airtight. The permits were revoked. The fines started piling up. Eventually, she moved out. Quietly. No grand send-off. No bags thrown in the yard. Just silence. I stood on the porch the day the movers came. Watched them carry out the same couch I'd once napped on. The dining table I built by hand, plank by plank. She glanced at me once. From the driver's side of her Lexus, I nodded. She didn't wave back. Didn't matter. The house stood empty now. Hollow. A shell, but the land. Still mine. Always mine. The silence after the storm was louder than I expected. Laura didn't fight the eviction any further. After her second lawyer quietly backed out, and the zoning board issued fines for every inch of unauthorized construction, her tone changed. She stopped calling, stopped sending emails. She packed what she could, sold what she couldn't, and disappeared from that house like a ghost fleeing daylight. But the fallout followed her. The real estate firm where she once wore the title of partner, they let her go within 2 weeks. Word got around fast. Not because I told anyone, but because small towns whisper louder than city billboards. A partner who lies on legal filings and builds on stolen land. Not good optics for a firm built on trust and title integrity. The online reviews for her luxury guest rental short-lived, as it was stanked after the listing disappeared mid. Guests complained of cancellations, police tape, construction delays. Her Instagram, once full of soft filtered pictures of charcuterie boards and sunset wine glasses, went dark, and her new boyfriend, the one she risked everything for, gone. Moved out days after the stop work order hit. It was like she vanished from the life she'd tried to build on my land. brick by deceitful brick. As for me, the days got quieter. No more construction noises. No more lights flickering in the windows late into the night. No more standing on the porch of my trailer wondering what kind of party was happening in the house I built. I started walking the property again, really walking it, with coffee in hand and boots crunching over the dirt I grew up on. I started thinking about what to do next. Whether I'd tear the house down, rent it out, or maybe just leave it be for a while, let it sit there and remember what happened. But even as the dust settled, there was still something heavy in my chest. Not bitterness, not rage, just grief. The kind that doesn't burn anymore. The kind that sinks soft and deep. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of me that believed in her. The man who thought building a dream together meant she'd protect it the same way I did. That man was gone, and maybe that's not all bad. Maybe we have to lose parts of ourselves to grow into who we're really meant to be. One afternoon, I sat on the porch steps, the same spot I'd watched it all unravel. The sun was setting behind the house. Light filtered through the broken blinds she left behind. It was quiet, peaceful. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for months. The war was over, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally start again. Solid ground. It's been 8 months since Laura left for good. The house still stands, but it's quiet now. Not hollow, just still. And that stillness, it doesn't haunt me anymore. It feels earned. I didn't tear the house down. Thought about it, sure. There were days I stood out front with the demolition contractor's number in my hand, imagining what it'd feel like to watch it crumble. But I didn't, because I realized something important. It wasn't the house that betrayed me. It was the people in it. And brick and wood don't lie. Instead, I did something different. I remodeled it. Not big changes, just enough to make it mine again. I stripped the walls bare of everything Laura touched, painted over her colors, replaced her fixtures, gutted the guest wing she tried to turn into a business. I put in my own furniture, bought a new stove, redid the floors, and little by little, it stopped feeling like our house and started feeling like my home. Funny how a coat of paint and a new kitchen table can feel like a fresh start. Rachel stuck around through it all. We don't just talk law anymore. She comes over for Sunday coffee sometimes, sits on the porch with me while the dogs roam the field. She tells me I should think about dating again, but I laugh it off. I'm not bitter, I'm just full. Not rushing to fill empty space anymore. Not looking for someone to complete me. I've got enough now. I even started a side project taking on small land ownership. Cases for folks who've been taken advantage of. It's not much, but helping people protect what's theirs feels right. Like maybe what happened to me wasn't just about pain. Maybe it was also about purpose. Looking back, I won't lie, there are still moments that catch me off guard sometimes. I'll see a couple walking hand in hand at the feed store or hear a song we used to play when building the house, and something sharp will flicker in my chest. But it doesn't linger like it used to. It doesn't hollow me out. It just reminds me how far I've come. Because this isn't a story about revenge, it's about resilience. Laura thought she could erase me, build a life on top of what I made, and leave me in the dust. But what she didn't understand, what she never understood, is that land roots deeper than lies. And some foundations are too solid to be moved. I didn't just survive her betrayal. I rebuilt from it better, stronger, wiser. People stop me in town sometimes, ask if I miss her, ask if I regret not fighting harder during the divorce. I always give them the same answer. I didn't need to fight for the house. I already had what mattered most. Because the truth is, Laura took the walls, the windows, and the doors. But I had the land, and in the end the land carried me through. People think betrayal ends with anger. That once you catch the lie, deliver justice, and close the door, you walk away feeling victorious. But the truth is, it's not that simple. Betrayal doesn't just steal trust, it reshapes who you are. It takes the soft, open parts of you and carves them into something harder, more watchful. But if you're lucky, if you choose not to let bitterness take root, it also makes you wiser, stronger, grounded. I learned that the hard way for a long time. I thought the house meant everything. The walls, the design, the shared dreams built into the frame. I thought giving it up was the loss. But what I didn't realize until the dust settled was that the true power, the real value, was in what couldn't be seen from the road. The dirt, the roots, the history. The land beneath us holds more than just structures. It holds stories, memories, legacies. And if you listen closely, it reminds you of who you were before someone tried to rewrite your ending. Laura came and went. Her love, her lies, her ambition, they all passed through like a storm. But I'm still here, and the ground I stand on, it never left me the lesson. Don't let someone take the core of who you are just because they dress up their lies in love. Don't trade your foundation for someone else's fantasy. You don't have to destroy them to win. You just have to stand your ground. Literally. In my case, so if you've ever felt like someone tried to build a future on your back, tried to make you feel small while they stood taller on your foundation, remember this. You don't have to shout to reclaim what's yours. Sometimes, the quietest man, with the deepest roots, wins the war without ever throwing a punch. And when the storm passes, and all that's left is you and the soil beneath your feet, Make sure what you're standing on is solid because everything else can be taken but your ground. That's yours forever.